All right, today we're going to break down a simple 5-step formula for low-stakes poker. This is designed to stop the bleeding and, start the crushing. If you feel like you're stuck playing small stakes, this is the playbook you've been waiting for. Let's dive in.
So does this whole scene feel a little too familiar? You're sitting at a 1-2, maybe a 2-5 table, and you just feel like you're treading water, right? You have some winning sessions, sure, but then you have the losing ones, and you never seem to build a real sustainable bankroll. Look, you're not alone. This is a super common frustration. And hey, it's no surprise you feel that way. The games are just chaotic. You've got players making moves that just defy all logic. And that rake, man, it feels like it's eating you alive, just nipping away at every small pot you manage to win. It really does feel like an uphill battle. You start to think maybe winning consistently in these games is actually impossible, but it's not.
That's where you'd be wrong. What if I told you there's a clear path through all that noise? A structured, easy-to-remember playbook designed specifically to exploit the exact same mistakes your opponents are making over and over again every single hand.
And forget about memorizing a bunch of complex charts. We're not talking about GTO wizardry here. We're talking about a streamlined, 5-step game plan that covers you from pre-flop all the way to the river. This is your new framework for profitable poker.
So here it is, the whole shebang, right on one slide. This is your new roadmap. And I want you to see how each step is designed to exploit a very specific, very common leak in your opponent's games. We're going to break each one down, but notice how they all connect. Your pre-flop aggression sets up super simple post-flop decisions, which then leads to disciplined, profitable plays on the turn and river. This is how you grab the game by the scruff of the neck.
All right, let's dig in. Step 1. Everything, and I mean everything, starts right here before the flop is even dealt. Winning poker is aggressive poker, plain and simple, and that foundation gets built by taking control of the pot from the very beginning. So let's just look at the two paths you can take here. Passive play, just calling, limping in, that's the death knell in high-rake games. You're just inviting everyone to see a cheap flop, and you give up all control. But aggressive play, raising, 3-betting, it does the complete opposite. It builds a bigger pot for when you do hit a hand, it isolates the weaker players you want to play against, and crucially, it gives you a way to win the pot right then and there, without ever needing the best cards. Okay, so is this a hard and fast rule? Not quite, but it's close. Of course, there are a few exceptions. When you're in the big blind and the action closes on you, or when you're on the button with perfect position, calling can definitely be profitable. But just notice how specific these situations are. Outside of these rare spots, your default action should always be raise, 3-bet, or get out of the way. No more limping. Okay, so you've taken control pre-flop. You raised. Now what? Well, the next two steps give you a dead simple but super powerful engine for playing the flop and the turn. Forget all that confusion and uncertainty. This is your new if-then system. And you know what's crazy? This whole system, it boils down to one simple thing. Just one. Position. Whether you're acting before your opponent or after your opponent, that is going to dictate your entire strategy. It simplifies absolutely everything. And this slide really lays out the two sides of that coin perfectly. If you raise pre-flop and you are in position, you have what's called range advantage. So you are just firing a continuation bet 100% of the time. You press that advantage because, let's be honest, low-stakes players almost never check-raise bluff. But if you're out of position, you do the exact opposite. You check your entire range and you let them make the first move.
Now, I know what you're thinking. Checking, isn't that weak? Absolutely not. Don't mistake this for weakness. Checking here is actually a powerful information-gathering play. Your opponents, they're going to tell you a story with their bet sizing. Big bets usually mean strong hands. Smaller bets mean weaker ones. By checking, you force them to open their playbook and reveal their hand strength, giving you all the info you need to make a perfect decision. All right, now we're getting to the money streets, the turn and the river. These are the streets where the biggest pots are won and lost. Having a crystal clear plan here is what separates the break-even players from the ones who are consistently crushing.
Okay, first things first, let's blow up one of the biggest myths in low-stakes poker. You always hear people say, you can't bluff low-stakes players. That is just flat out wrong. The truth is much more nuanced. They don't bluff you when you show aggression. But the second you show weakness, the moment you check, they will try to bluff you off every pot. Understanding this little piece of psychology is the key to the next two steps. Which brings us right to step 4, fold to aggression. And I want you to look at this number, 88%. Yeah, I know, it looks insane, right? This is roughly how often you should be folding when you bet the turn and get raised by a typical low-stakes player.
So why is it so high? Well, think back to that myth we just busted. When you've shown aggression on the preflop, the flop, and now the turn, and they suddenly wake up and raise you, they are almost never, ever bluffing. Their range is just crushed down to absolute monsters, like sets and flushes. The key here is just pure discipline. You have to be willing to fold hands that feel really strong, like top pair. I promise you, this one adjustment will save you a fortune.
And that brings us to the grand finale. Step 5. This is where we get a little bit fancy, a little bit counterintuitive, and we learn a really powerful way to bluff on the river. This is where we turn their own tendencies completely against them.
So this slide shows a really powerful, polarized betting strategy for the river. First, you see this term capped range? What does that even mean? Well, think about it. Since your opponent just called you on the flop and the turn, their hand range probably doesn't include monster hands, because they would have raised those earlier, right? There's a cap on how strong their hand can be, and we exploit this. So as you can see on the left, when we have a good hand for value, we bet small, like half the pot, to get called by their weaker hands. But look at the bar on the right. When we bluff, we go huge, 2.5 times the pot. This massive overbet puts maximum pressure on all their medium-strength hands and basically forces them to fold.
And that's it. That's the formula. This isn't just a random collection of tips. It's a cohesive system, a playbook that gives you a clear, professional-level strategy to execute against a field of players who are, for the most part, just guessing. This is your new edge.
So let's just put it all together one last time. It starts with aggression preflop. That sets up simple position-based rules for the flop. This then leads to disciplined folds on the turn against their super strong ranges, and then powerful polarized bluffs on the river against their weak ranges. See? Every step just flows into the next. Simple, powerful, and crazy effective.
And you know what the best part is? You don't have to wait for some special occasion. In your very next session, I guarantee you will see players making every single one of these fundamental mistakes. The only question left is, now that you have the playbook, are you ready to finally step up and start capitalizing?
Start a live chat now to join one of our clubs or ask us any questions. Message at BluffingMonkeys24_7 on Telegram or visit bluffingmonkeys.com and start a live chat.